Hi, Todd here with Interview Expert. Today I'm going to go over the importance of technique and kind of give you a pointer on how to use a technique that we use in interviewing or training people that's called traits. First of all, I'm going to go over the importance of having an interview technique. Back from my own personal experience, back when I was in grade school, probably the fourth grade, I had a friend who really wanted to be good at basketball, and we were all on a team together. So he would practice and practice and practice. Unfortunately, he didn't have a parent who had ever played basketball, so he was out there shooting with two hands. Now, the problem with shooting with two hands is that you shoot the ball, but your dominant hand tends to have a little bit more power than your less dominant hand, and it puts a spin on the ball. And then if the ball hits the rim, it basically makes it so it typically doesn't follow true and go into the basket. So it's very important, obviously, to learn proper technique and shoot with one hand. And we see in the pros, in college, in high school, in grade school, everyone shoots with one hand because this technique provides a significant advantage. The same holds true in interviewing. So a lot of people go out and want to be self-taught in interviewing, and then they're not following a technique or the proper technique on how to interview. And this really puts them at a great disadvantage. What we see from those people is they'll get into a company at a very low position. You know, they may be a high performer or are a high performer, but they typically stay with that company, maybe even their entire career, because they're not able to interview. So the problem with that is if you hit a roadblock in your career and don't make that promotion that you need in order to get to the next level that you wanted to get to, your career is de facto over. The other problem is you're starting at a much lower level, which kind of puts you behind your class, which then makes it so you're not getting to levels in time that you should be getting at, and can also stifle your career as well. Therefore, it's critical for your career that you have the proper interview technique. And here at Interview Expert, we teach you on how to tell stories in interviews, because that's our technique. We anticipate the questions that you're likely to be asked and then help you build a story, and that story is what you're using in the interview to answer those questions, and is very powerful. But that's not quite enough. So the proper technique, you know, the next level, you always see the college basketball players and they go to their spots on the floor and they shoot from those spots, because at those spots, they know that distance and they know exactly the amount of pressure to put on the ball from that spot to be able to make it, and that increases their shooting percentage. That's what we teach is our traits. So now I'm going to give you an example of how we use traits and what they are. I think just saying, oh, we'll add traits to your stories, that doesn't do anybody any good without an example and having you fully understand what I'm talking about. A trait is when you're adding the thing in your story that the interviewer is actually looking for or trying to bring out from you. So you're doing this for the interviewer so that it's very easy for them to find the actual kind of breadcrumbs that they're looking for that show the interviewer that you're a high performer. So what I mean by that is I'm going to go through the trait example of analysis. Now, what analysis is your ability to go and say, what information do I need to solve this problem or bring a solution to the table? And you go in and you look and you hunt down all the available information that you need and you compile it, and then you begin to build your solution or your ability to make a decision for that problem. The first example I'm going to give you is where someone really doesn't bring the trait analysis into their story. So someone's asked a question, give me a time when you kind of put together a business case as a financial analyst to help the company solve a problem. My response would be, well, I worked for a local grocery store and we were looking at local delivery for our customers. So I was put in charge of putting together a cost model, whether or not we could make money doing this. I looked at things like labor cost per hour, the cost to buy the vehicle, the cost of the fuel, the cost of insurance, the cost of other all available items, you know, repairs and maintenance. I built that cost model and I put it all together, and at the end of the day, I was able to produce what I was told later by operations was a highly accurate business model for the case that they gave me. And they really liked it because it suited their needs. Now, the problem with that example is if I'm the interviewer and I want more information, I don't really know as the interviewer if your cost model was accurate because you got lucky and you were just off on a couple digits and it kind of all balanced out, or whether or not you did a great job and I should be excited to hire you. So now as the interviewer, because you didn't really lay out all the information for me, now I either have two choices. I can either hunt for it and then kind of have questions that I'm asking that are kind of giveaways, like, was there a time of day that you found it was better to deliver? You know, obviously if you get that question from the interviewer and you say, no, I didn't think about that, that's not a good answer. So the normal person's gonna say, oh yeah, you know, we found that early morning and late afternoon was great, and we didn't wanna be delivering during rush hour. You see how the interviewer had to prompt you, and then they're kind of pulling out information, but they don't trust that information quite as much as if you had just delivered the information to them. So kind of keep that in mind. Now I'm going to give you a response for analysis that would be much better. I was working at a local grocery store, and I had to come up with a cost model for determining whether or not we should get involved in local delivery. You know, I came up with labor rates, I came up with all the normal costs, the repairs and maintenance, the oil changes, the gas, the insurance, the cost of lease or buy the vehicle, and I put those all into my model. The other things that I found were important was, you know, obviously the bigger the truck, the more groceries we can fit on that truck. But there is a point where you get too big, and then the truck no longer has the ability to move around neighborhoods, and then that's not very cost effective either, because then you're probably gonna have to subsidize that with maybe cars or some other vehicle, and then you're not in a uniform area where all your trucks are the same, which wasn't something we wanted to get into. Additionally, obviously, if you're too small, you can carry less groceries. So we kind of came up with a van, you know, that had high tops so the person could stand it, and that gave us the ability to have shelves to get the groceries up as high as possible. We really looked, and one of the more challenging things was coming out with the service area and then preferred times of delivery. Obviously, we were kind of running the van about 12 hours a day, and even though we would be in rush hour at times, we would deliver during those times even though it was less efficient. But getting the van size down so that it was under the size and scope where we would need a CDL driver, a professional driver to drive it, saved on our labor costs, and we found that those costs offset the advantages of having a larger vehicle. I presented that to the operations people. They came back to me after we had implemented and said, your cost model was spot on and was highly accurate, and they appreciated the job I had done. Now you can see in the second answer, because I'm going through more details, more analysis, the answer comes across as much more believable. Plus, which person would you rather hire? Somebody that does the higher level detail and can speak to it, or somebody that has to have that detail drawn out? Who's the more effective communicator? That's how we use traits in interview questions. Ideally, for every story you have, at least we like to say 2 minimum, 3's better. For longer stories, you might have 4 or 5. There would be other traits that we could actually add into that story. For example, tinkering would be one that we could add in, where we would talk about how we were playing with different things once we got the delivery system up and running, and how we use that to actually improve the overall quality of the delivery. But at this point, I was just wanting to go over analysis. So hopefully this is helpful for you, going over technique and why it's important, and know that having a good technique in interview is critical for your career, because you have to be able to have that mobility, or at least other options throughout industry, so that you can further your career. Hopefully you like this and found this helpful. Click the like and subscribe button below, and until next time, have a great day. Thanks.